"I lose time when I sleep." The first time Daniel noticed the missing time, he blamed exhaustion. It had been one of those weeks that seemed to collapse in on itself late nights. Too much coffee, the kind of fatigue that made your thoughts feel sticky, like they had to push through syrup just to exist. He was working remotely, editing hours of security footage for a logistics company that insisted nothing strange ever happened in their warehouses. His job was to confirm that lie. So when he woke up on Thursday morning and found his alarm clock blinking 11:42 a.m., he didn't panic. He frowned, rubbed his eyes, and sat up slowly. "I must have turned it off," he muttered. Except he never did that. Daniel was meticulous about mornings. He needed them structured. Alarm at 7 a.m. Sit up immediately. Shower. Coffee. No snoozing, no drifting. If he let himself linger, his thoughts wandered into places he didn't like: dark, recursive loops that made him question how long he'd been awake, or if he ever truly was. Still, everyone slips. He brushed it off. But the second time, it didn't feel like slipping. It felt like falling. Saturday night, Daniel went to bed at 11:15 p.m. He remembered it clearly. He always remembered the moments before sleep. They felt important, like the edge of something. He had checked his phone, 11:14 a.m., turned off the lamp, 11:15 a.m., closed his eyes, 11:16 a.m. That last minute always stretched strangely. Then he was standing in his kitchen. Morning light poured through the blinds in harsh, accusing stripes. The clock on the microwave read 10:03 a.m. Daniel didn't move. His hand was resting on the counter. There was a glass of water beside him, half empty. He didn't remember pouring it. He didn't remember getting out of bed. He didn't remember walking. The last thing he remembered was the exact second sleep took him. And now 10 hours were gone. His first instinct wasn't fear. It was denial. "Sleepwalking," he said out loud, his voice thin and uncertain in the quiet apartment. He had no history of it. No childhood stories, no concerned parents guiding him back to bed. But people develop things late, didn't they? Stress could do that. Burnout. Neurological quirks. There were explanations. There had to be. He checked his apartment. Everything looked normal. The door was still locked from the inside. Windows sealed. No signs of disturbance. The bed was unmade, but that was expected. The sheets were tangled, twisted into a shape that looked almost like someone had struggled inside them. That gave him pause. He stepped closer. The sheets weren't just tangled. They were pulled tight toward the foot of the bed, like something or someone had been dragged. Daniel swallowed. "Don't," he whispered to himself. "Don't do that. Don't imagine things." He laughed it off. A short, brittle sound that didn't belong in the room. Then he made coffee. Over the next few days, Daniel tried to monitor himself. He set up his phone to record overnight. He placed a chair against his bedroom door so it would scrape loudly if opened. He even tied a loose string around his wrist and the bedpost, just enough tension that movement would wake him. He felt ridiculous, paranoid, but also uneasy, because something about the missing time didn't feel like sleepwalking. It felt... Monday night, he prepared everything carefully. Camera recording, chair positioned, string tied. He lay down at exactly 11:02 p.m., staring at the ceiling as the shadows from passing cars slid across it like slow-moving water. "I'll catch it," he murmured. His voice sounded smaller than usual, more distant. He woke up on the floor, cold. That was the first thing he noticed. The hardwood pressed against his cheek, leaching warmth from his skin. His body ached as if he had been lying there for hours in an unnatural position. He opened his eyes slowly. The room was dim, not quite night, not quite morning. That strange in-between time where everything feels suspended. His phone was still recording on the dresser. The red dot blinked. Daniel pushed himself up. Every joint protested. His head throbbed with a dull, persistent pressure, like something had been pressing inward from the outside. He looked at the clock. 4:17 a.m. That's not, he whispered. He had gone to bed at 11:02 a.m. Now it was 4:17 a.m. Over 5 hours. Gone. Again. His gaze snapped to the door. The chair was still in place, untouched. The string around his wrist still tied, still taut. Daniel felt something shift inside his chest. A subtle, creeping realization. He hadn't left the bed, but he had still lost time. "No," he said louder now. That wasn't possible. If he hadn't moved, if the room hadn't changed, then where had he been? He stood slowly, his legs unsteady. The air felt not colder exactly, just thinner, as if the room had been emptied of something essential. He rushed to the dresser and grabbed his phone. His hands trembled as he unlocked it and opened the recording. The footage began normally. 11:02 p.m. Daniel lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. 11:10 a.m. still awake. 11:23 a.m. eyes closed. Then nothing. Not darkness. Not a cut. Just him. Lying there, perfectly still. The timestamp ticked forward. 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Daniel watched, barely breathing. There was no movement, no twitching, no sleepwalking. Just his body lying motionless. Too motionless. At 2:43 a.m., something changed. It was subtle. So subtle he almost missed it. A shift in the shadows. Not from outside, from inside the room. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. The darkness near the corner of the ceiling seemed to deepen, not spread, not move, just thicken. Then, slowly, his body in the video sat up. Daniel dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a sharp crack, the screen flashing briefly before going black. He staggered backward, his heart slamming violently against his ribs. "No," he said again, shaking his head. "No." That wasn't right. That couldn't be right. He hadn't moved. He remembered not moving. But the video, his breath came in short, uneven bursts. He didn't want to pick the phone back up. Didn't want to confirm it. Because if it was real, if that had actually happened, then the missing time wasn't empty. It was occupied. Something had been there. In his body. Daniel slowly bent down and picked up the phone. The screen flickered back to life. The video resumed. His on-screen self sat at the edge of the bed. Head tilted slightly downward. Still. Too still. Then it turned. Not like a person waking up. Not groggy. Not confused. But smooth. Deliberate. Controlled. And it looked directly at the camera. Daniel's stomach dropped. Because his face was smiling. Not a normal smile. Not tired. Not amused. Wrong. The lips stretched too wide. The eyes didn't match. They were open unblinking, reflecting the dim light in a way that made them seem hollow. Like something was looking through them. Then, in the video, it spoke. There was no sound. But Daniel could see the movement. Slow. Careful. Intentional. 3 words. The phone slipped from his hands again. This time he didn't pick it up, because he already knew what it had said. He felt it, deep in his chest, like something pressing outward, trying to be acknowledged. You stayed. Daniel backed away from the dresser, from the phone, from the bed. "I didn't," he whispered.
"I didn't stay."
But even as he said it, he wasn't sure, because the truth was he didn't remember leaving, and something else did. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in the corner of his living room, every light turned on, staring at the hallway that led to his bedroom, waiting, listening, because now he understood something he hadn't before. The missing time wasn't absence, it was presence. And whatever was there was starting to notice him. Daniel didn't go back into the bedroom until the sun was fully up. Even then, he didn't step inside at first. He stood in the hallway, staring at the open doorway like it might react to him, like the room itself was aware that he had seen something he wasn't supposed to. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. It looked like an ordinary room again. Bed unmade. Curtains slightly open. The faint smell of dust and stale air lingering like it always did. That almost made it worse, because it meant whatever had happened had left no trace, except in him and in the video. Daniel forced himself forward. Each step felt deliberate, unnatural, like he was walking into a place he had already abandoned. The phone still lay on the floor where he had dropped it. The screen had gone dark again, but when he picked it up, it flickered back to life immediately, too quickly, as if it had been waiting. He hesitated, then pressed play. He needed to see it again. Needed to prove to himself that he hadn't imagined it. The footage resumed exactly where it had left off. His body, no, not his body, something wearing it sat on the edge of the bed facing the camera. The smile was still there, stretched and unnatural, frozen in place like a mask that didn't quite fit. Daniel's throat tightened. But he didn't stop it. He couldn't. On the screen, the thing that looked like him slowly leaned forward, closer to the camera, closer, until the face filled the frame.
The eyes, they were dim.
That was the wrong word. They were full, too full, as if something vast and patient was packed behind them, pressing outward, observing. Then the mouth moved again. More words, slow,
Measured.
Daniel leaned in despite himself, his pulse roaring in his ears. He tried to read the lips, tried to understand, but the movement didn't match anything natural. The shapes were slightly off, like whoever was speaking had learned how to form words by watching but didn't fully grasp how they worked. Still, he could feel the meaning. The same way you understand something in a dream without needing to hear it. A phrase formed in his mind. Not heard, not seen, known. Stay awake next time. Daniel jerked back. No, he said immediately, shaking his head.
No, that's not.
But it was.
He knew it was.
The video hadn't made a sound, but the meaning had reached him anyway. And that terrified him more than anything else. Because it meant the communication wasn't limited to the screen. It was crossing over. He dropped the phone onto the bed this time, as if distance could protect him. His gaze darted around the room. Corners. Ceiling. Shadows. They looked normal. But now he knew better. Normal didn't mean safe. Normal just meant it hadn't decided to move yet. Daniel backed out of the room. He shut the door, locked it, then stood there breathing hard, staring at the handle like it might turn on its own. It didn't. But the silence that followed felt heavier than before, like something was listening, waiting for him to understand the rules. He didn't go to work that day, or the next. Time blurred, not lost this time, but stretched thin by anxiety. Every hour felt fragile, like it might crack if he looked at it too closely. He avoided sleep. At first, it was easy. Fear kept him alert. Coffee helped. Cold water on his face. Talking out loud just to hear something human in the air. I'm awake, he would say. I'm still here. He said it often. Too often. By the second night, his thoughts began to slip. Not fully. Just enough. The edges of things softened. Sounds lingered a little too long. The apartment didn't feel as solid as it should. He caught himself staring at the bedroom door again and again. Not out of curiosity, out of awareness. Like you might stare at a sleeping animal that could wake at any moment. At 3:12 a.m. he heard it, a faint sound. From the other side of the door. Daniel froze. The air in his lungs went still. He didn't breathe, didn't move. The sound came again. A soft, dragging noise. Like fabric shifting across wood, or footsteps. Slow, measured. Inside the bedroom, Daniel's pulse spiked violently. That's not possible, he whispered. He hadn't gone in there. He hadn't slept. There shouldn't be anything in that room. The sound continued. A step. Pause. Another step. He stared at the door. At the thin line of shadow beneath it. Nothing moved there. But the sound was real.
Stop, he said louder.
The footsteps stopped instantly. The silence that followed felt wrong. Not empty. Expectant. Then a single knock. From inside the bedroom. Daniel stumbled back. No, he said, shaking his head rapidly.
No.
Another knock. Slower this time. Deliberate. As if whoever or whatever was inside knew exactly what it was doing. Daniel's vision blurred slightly at the edges. Lack of sleep.
Panic.
Or something else. Go away, he said. His voice cracked. The door didn't move, but the handle twitched. Just slightly. Barely enough to be certain. Daniel felt something in his mind shift. A pressure.
Not physical.
Internal. Like a thought that wasn't his trying to surface.
A suggestion.
Soft. Persistent. Open it. He clamped his eyes shut. No, he said again, louder, firmer. That's not me. The pressure increased. Not painful, but insistent, like a hand gently guiding his attention. Open it. Just look. Daniel pressed his hands against his ears as if that could block it. I'm awake, he repeated. I'm awake, I'm awake.
The thought changed, subtly.
Cleverly. You don't need to sleep. We can show you anyway. Daniel's breath hitched. His eyes snapped open.
The hallway felt narrower, the walls closer,
the air thicker, and the door was no longer still. The handle turned, slowly, smoothly. From the inside, the lock clicked. Daniel didn't remember unlocking it, but he must have. He must have. Because now the door was opening. A thin sliver of darkness appeared, then widened. The room beyond wasn't as he remembered. It was darker, deeper, as if the shadows inside had thickened into something more substantial. Something that didn't belong to light anymore. Daniel took a step back, then another, but his gaze stayed fixed on the opening. Something moved inside. Not a figure. More like an absence shifting, a distortion. Like space itself bending around a presence too large to fully exist there. Then a hand, his hand, reached out from the darkness, gripping the edge of the door. Pali.
Familiar.
Wrong. Daniel's stomach twisted violently. No, he whispered. The hand tightened. The door opened wider, and then it stepped out. Daniel stared, because it was him, perfectly, every detail, every feature.
Except the eye.
Too open, too aware, and the smile. That same stretched, unnatural smile. It tilted its head slightly, mirroring him, studying him. Then it spoke. This time there was sound, a voice, his voice, but hollow, layered, as if something else was speaking through it. You didn't leave. Daniel's legs trembled. I'm right here, he said, his voice barely holding together. I never left. The thing smiled wider. You don't remember leaving. The words landed differently, not as a correction, as a fact. Daniel shook his head. No, I stayed awake. I didn't. The thing took a step closer. Daniel instinctively stepped back. They moved in sync, a mirror, but not quite, not perfectly. You think sleep is the only way, it said softly. Daniel's chest tightened.
What are you? He demanded.
The thing paused, as if considering the question. Then it answered, Where you go? The hallway seemed to tilt, just slightly, enough to make Daniel's balance falter. That doesn't make sense, he said. But his voice lacked conviction, because something inside him, something deep and buried, understood. The thing raised its hand, slowly, reaching toward him. Daniel flinched, but didn't move away. Couldn't. Because the closer it got, the heavier his thoughts became. Like gravity was shifting inside his mind. You're still learning, it said. The fingers brushed his cheek, cold, not like skin, like absence. And in that instant, Daniel saw something. Not with his eyes, with his mind. A glimpse, endless. Dark, not empty but full of something that didn't have a shape. Something that waited. Something that had been waiting long before he ever noticed it. He gasped, staggered back. The contact broke. The vision vanished. The hallway snapped back into place. The thing stood where it had been, watching him, smiling. You stay longer each time, it said. Daniel shook his head violently. No, I'm not going anywhere. The thing's expression didn't change, but something behind the eyes shifted. Amusement. You already are. Then, without warning, it stepped backward, into the bedroom. The darkness swallowed it instantly. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked, and everything went silent again. Daniel stood there, shaking, breathing hard, trying to hold on to the moment, to reality, to himself. But one thought refused to let go. Not spoke, not shown. Felt, deep, unavoidable. He hadn't just lost time. He had spent it somewhere. And that place was starting to follow him back. Daniel didn't move for a long time after the door slammed. He stood in the hallway, staring at it, waiting for it to open again. Waiting for the handle to turn. waiting for something and a thing to prove that what he had just seen hadn't been real. Nothing happened. The apartment settled into silence. A thick, suffocating silence that pressed against his ears until it almost felt like sound. Finally, his legs gave out. He slid down the wall and sat on the floor, pulling his knees close, trying to steady his breathing. "That wasn't real," he whispered. But the words sounded hollow.
Because something had changed.
Not just outside, inside him. There was a residue now, a feeling, like a faint echo of that place he had seen when it touched him. It lingered in the back of his mind, quiet but undeniable. And worst of all, it felt familiar. He didn't realize he had fallen asleep until he woke up. There was no transition, no drifting, no closing of his eyes. One moment he was sitting in the hallway. The next he was somewhere else. There was no floor, no ceiling, no walls. Just a vast, endless dark that wasn't empty but not solid either. It felt like standing inside something that didn't need space to exist. Daniel's breath came out in short, shallow bursts. He turned slowly, but there was nothing to orient himself against. No up, no down, only presence. "I'm awake," he said. But the words didn't sound right. They didn't echo. They didn't fade. They just stopped. Like the space itself refused to carry them. A thought slipped into his mind. "Not him. You stayed." Daniel's heart began to pound. "No," he said immediately. "I didn't. I was awake. I never."
You're here.
The realization hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't dreaming. Not like before. This wasn't sleep. This was the missing time. "I don't belong here," he said, louder now. The darkness didn't respond, but something within it shifted. Not visibly, but perceptibly, like a tension turning toward him. "You came." Daniel shook his head, panic rising fast. "I didn't choose this." A pause. "Then you never do." Something moved. This time he felt it, not around him, through him. A slow, invasive sensation like cold water seeping into cracks he didn't know existed.
His thoughts faltered.
Memories flickered, not just his, others.
Fragments.
Faces he didn't recognize. Rooms he had never been in. Voices layered over one another, whispering in tones that overlapped and blurred. "How many?" Daniel whispered. The answer came instantly. "All of you." His stomach twisted violently. "No," he said.
No, I'm not.
The darkness tightened. Not physically, conceptually. Like the idea of space itself was shrinking around him. "You learn slower than the others."
Daniel froze. What others?
The silence stretched. Then shapes began to form. Not complete, but impressions. Figures. Standing at a distance he couldn't measure.
What? His chest tightened.
"There were too many. You're not real," he said. But his voice shook, because they were. Not in the way people were, but in the way something unavoidable is real. A figure stepped closer. Its shape wavered, unstable, like it hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. Then it settled. Daniel felt his breath catch. Because it looked like him. Not exact, not cleanly, but close enough. A version of him, distorted, stretched in subtle ways that made it wrong on a level his mind struggled to process. "You're..." The figure tilted its head, not quite mimicking, not quite independent, something in between. "We are what stays." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, we come back. I wake up. For now." The words hit harder than anything else. The figure stepped closer. Then another, and another. Each one shifting into something familiar. Not all Daniel. Some were different. Different faces. Different bodies. Bouthol reconnaissable. Human. Daniel staggered back. "There are more of you," he said. "More of you." His thoughts stumbled over the phrasing.
Of me?
Of those who lose time. The darkness seemed to deepen. Not outward. Inward. "You take us," Daniel said, the realization forming slowly. "When we sleep."
No.
The answer came sharper this time. "You leave." Daniel froze.
What?
Sleep is not absent. The figures moved closer, surrounding him, not touching, just closing in. It is passage. Daniel's breathing became erratic, That's not how it works, he said. Sleep is just rest. A door. The word echoed not in sound, but in meaning. Final.
And you're on the other side, Daniel asked.
We are what remains. The figure that looked most like him stepped forward again, close enough now that Daniel could see the details, the imperfections, the subtle distortions. The eyes too deep, too full. And what happens to us? Daniel asked. You stay longer. The answer was calm, almost gentle. Until you don't leave. Daniel felt something in his chest collapse. A quiet internal breaking. No, he whispered. That's not happening to me. It already is. The words weren't cruel. They weren't threatening. They were simply true. Daniel's mind raced. I can stay awake, he said quickly. I won't sleep. I won't come. You already did. The darkness shifted again. This time Daniel felt a pull at him. Not physically, but something deeper, something essential. Time does not pass the same way. His thoughts began to blur, edges dissolving, focus slipping. You're lying, he said. But the words felt weak, distant. You measure it wrong. The figure raised its hand, reaching toward him. Just like before. Every time you closed your eyes, Daniel tried to step back, but his body didn't respond the way it should. You stay longer here. The hand touched his chest. And suddenly Daniel saw everything. Not images, not clearly, but enough. Time stretching, minutes becoming hours. Hours becoming something else entirely. Consciousness slipping in and out, each return weaker than the last. Each departure longer, deeper. I'm losing time, he whispered. You are losing yourself. The realization hit him with crushing clarity. It wasn't about sleep. It wasn't about missing hours. It was about erosion, piece by piece.
Night by night.
Until there was nothing left to come back. No, Daniel gasped.
No, I won't let that happen.
You don't decide. The figures leaned closer, the space around him tightening further. You already chose. I didn't choose anything. You closed your eyes. Daniel's thoughts fractured. That's not everyone sleeps. Not everyone comes here. The darkness pulsed.
One.
Twice. But you did. Daniel's knees buckled. He collapsed into nothingness that somehow supported him.
Why me?
The answer came slowly. Deliberately. You noticed. Daniel's breath hitched. Most don't. The figures began to fade slightly. Not leaving. Just becoming less defined. But now the voice softened, almost pleased. You won't forget. Daniel's vision blurred. The darkness thickened. The pressure in his mind intensified. You're not taking me, he said, his voice breaking.
I'm not staying.
We don't take. The last words echoed through him. We wait. And then everything collapsed. Daniel woke up screaming. He was back in his apartment, on the floor, exactly where he had been. But something was wrong. The light was different, dimmer, colder. He scrambled to his feet, his heart racing. No, no, no. He rushed to the kitchen. The clock. He needed the clock. 10:03 a.m. Daniel froze. That's not possible, he whispered. That's the same time. His reflection caught in the microwave door. He turned slowly. The man staring back at him looked like him. Exactly like him, except the eyes. They were just a little too open. And the smile that was starting to form. Part 4, the resolution twist ending. Daniel didn't move. He stood in the kitchen, staring at his reflection, trying to control his breathing, but something about the rhythm felt off. Too even. Too calm. I'm awake, he said. The words came out steady. Too steady. The reflection didn't move. Not immediately. Daniel's stomach tightened. Slowly, carefully, he raised his hand. The reflection followed. Perfectly. Relief tried to surface. But it didn't last. Because the smile, it was still there. Lingering. I'm fine, Daniel said. And this time the reflection spoke with him. At the exact same time. The exact same tone. The exact same breath. Too perfect. Daniel stepped back. The reflection stepped back, still smiling. No, he was.
Something wasn't right. Something wasn't, his thoughts stuttered.
For a moment, he couldn't remember what he had been thinking. Just a second. A gap. Small, but there. Daniel froze. How long? He murmured. The question didn't finish, because the answer came uninvited. Longer. He staggered back, gripping the edge of the counter.
That's not, he began.
But the words dissolved. They didn't feel solid anymore. Fragments of the dark place slipped into his awareness. Not fully. Just impressions.
Wait.
Stillness. Waiting. No, he said louder now. I'm still here. I'm still. The sentence broke, because he wasn't sure what here meant anymore. He rushed out of the kitchen. The apartment felt different now, subtly. Like everything was slightly misaligned. The hallway longer than it should be. The walls just a little too close. The bedroom door, still closed, still locked. Daniel stared at it. A deep instinctive dread settled in his chest. He knew without knowing how that something was behind it, waiting. Don't open it, he whispered. But the thought that followed wasn't his. You already did. His hand moved. No, he said immediately, grabbing his wrist with his other hand. But the movement didn't stop. It continued. Slow. Inevitable.
His fingers touched the handle.
Cold. You don't control it anymore, the voice said. Not from outside. From within. Daniel's breath became shallow. I do, he insisted. But the words felt weak. Detached. The handle turned. The lock clicked, and the door opened. Darkness. Deeper than before. Not just absence of light. Something thicker. Something that seemed to absorb the air itself. Daniel tried to step back. He couldn't. His body moved forward. No, I'm not going in there, he said, panic rising sharply now. But his legs didn't listen. The threshold approached. The darkness seemed to breathe. Step. And then he stopped. For a moment, just a moment, he regained control. His body trembled violently as he forced himself backward. One step. Then another. I'm not you, he said, voice shaking. I'm not staying. Silence. Then a laugh. Not loud. Not mocking.
Just.
You already stayed. The words sank deep. Daniel's mind fractured again. Memories slipping. Moments blurring. He tried to recall the last full day he had lived. A complete one. Morning to night. Without gaps. Without missing time. He couldn't. His chest tightened. How long has it been? He whispered. No answer. Because he already knew. He turned slowly away from the door, back toward the hallway, and froze. Someone was standing there, not emerging, not appearing, just there. The other version, perfect, still.
What?
Except this time there was no distortion, no visible wrongness. It looked,
Hi, it said.
In his voice.
Warm.
Calm. Daniel's throat closed. You're late, it added. Late. The word echoed strangely. I'm not, Daniel began. But the sentence didn't hold. Because something shifted again. And suddenly he wasn't in the hallway anymore. He was somewhere else. The dark place, but different now. Closer. More defined. And in front of him a figure. Standing where he had just been. In the apartment. Looking around. Breathing. Alive. Daniel's breath hitched. No, he said. But the voice didn't reach. Because now he wasn't speaking. He was watching. From here. From the place. He stumbled forward. But there was no distance to cross. Get out, he tried to shout. Nothing. No sound. On the other side, his body moved. The other him. It stretched slightly. Rolled its shoulders. Like someone settling into something new. Then it smiled. A natural smile. Easy. Comfortable. It walked into the kitchen. Daniel followed or tried to, but he couldn't move the way he wanted. Movement didn't work the same here. The space didn't allow it. He could only and feel. Time passed, or didn't. It was impossible to tell. But eventually the other him returned, stood in the hallway, facing the bedroom door. Daniel's awareness sharpened. No, he tried again. The other him hesitated, just for a moment. Then it turned away and walked past the door. Didn't open it. Didn't go inside. Daniel felt something shift. Understanding. It didn't need the door anymore because it wasn't going there. Daniel was. The realization settled slowly, like something inevitable finally being accepted. He wasn't losing time anymore. He had lost it. Completely. The dark space around him deepened. But it didn't feel unfamiliar now. It felt occupied. Not empty. Never empty. A presence formed near him. Not sudden. Not threatening. Just the version of him from before. The one with the wrong smile. It stood beside him. "You understand now," it said. Daniel didn't answer. Because there was nothing left to argue. "What happens now?" he asked finally. The figure tilted its head. "We wait." Daniel looked outward, at the faint, distant impression of the world he had left, at the life that was no longer his. And for the first time he noticed something else. Shapes. Other figures.
Watching.
Some close.
Some far.
All silent. All aware. All waiting.
How many?
Daniel whispered. The answer came softly. "All of you." Daniel closed his eyes. But it didn't matter. Because here closing your eyes didn't make things disappear. It only meant you stayed. And somewhere far away in a small apartment filled with ordinary light, a man who looked exactly like Daniel sat down on his bed, stretched and yawned. Tired. Because even now he still needed to sleep.